Hi, I'm Dr. Kurt Wooler for AutismRecoverySystem.com. I want to present a case to you about a 7-year-old autistic boy with Clostridia bacteria toxins and high oxalate. So this was a child I saw a number of years ago with severe autism. In fact, his behavior was so bad, a lot of volatile, emotional behavior, easily upset, aggressive, hitting himself. It was actually difficult to examine him because of how upset and how much anxiety he had. Now, his primary issues were very, typical of many kids. No expressive language, poor social skills, a lot of self-stimulatory behavior. But one thing that tended to reoccur is that he had this behavior where he would scream and run through the house, hold his penis and groin area, and then oftentimes press his groin against the ground or furniture. Now, one of the things that I've observed over the years is a lot of kids with digestive pain, whether it's severe constipation, severe inflammation, some of the kids with inflammatory bowel disease will actually leverage themselves over the edge of furniture, whether it's a chair, a couch, a side table. And it's not being done in a playful way. It's usually associated with some type of negative behavior. They either look like they're in pain or they're just emotional. So this is not the boy, by the way. This is just a separate picture of another child. But it really can be an indication of some type of intestinal pain. It's not a normal behavior. Now, in this boy, a lot of digestive issues. He would fluctuate between loose stools and formed, undigested food was seen in his stools, sandy substance, which was kind of interesting, would show up in his stool at times. And the sandy substance, it looked like he had been to the beach, but, they hadn't. Abdominal distension was the primary physical examination finding. And then when organic acid test was done, it found that there was elevated levels of this chemical compound called HPHPA. And you can watch some of the other videos in this particular video section on the Autism Recovery System website to learn more about Clostridia. So these were initially treated with botanicals and periodically antibiotics and Culturelle probiotic, which is a specific probiotic for Clostridia. But what was interesting is early on when we did organic acid testing, the HPHPA marker was normal, although he would still have this negative behavior. And it was one of these situations where his situation was so significant that I felt it was best to actually treat with antibiotics just to get him out of that crisis state. And every time he went on an antibiotic, which we were using at that time was Flagyl, there would be a remarkable change in his behavior, and it would last for a number of months. And so early on when we did organic acid testing, we never captured elevated Clostridia, but periodically he would cycle back, and it's not like we were able to do testing every single time. It was always my suspicion that he had some underlying inflammatory bowel condition. Eventually, his HPHPA markers would show up, and HPHPA for this video is one of the primary markers on the organic acids test from Great Plains Lab that indicates the presence of Clostridia bacteria. Clostridia bacteria are very resistant to treatment. They can be very invasive, very difficult to eradicate, and they produce toxins that will alter brain and nervous system chemistry that can then lead to aggressive behavior, self-injurious behavior. So again, make sure to watch some of the other videos in this particular section, or watch the section, one of the module lectures in the Autism Recovery 101 course as well as part of this website. So eventually we were able to capture elevated Clostridia, and at times it would be quite high. And again, we would treat him. So let me go back real quickly. I can't go back on that video. Okay. So one of the things, again, was that he would improve with antibiotics, but I knew that wasn't the end of the story. And, parents tried with different types of diets, and I kept bringing up the case that his oxalic levels were also quite high. If we go back in time and you look at the previous organic acid test, his oxalate levels would be high too. And so I knew that this was a problem and had made that recommendation. And eventually the parents were successful in implementing an organic acid test, implementing a low oxalate diet, and then following that up with repeated organic acid testing to look at the levels. And once they were able to do it consistently, there was not only an improvement and a stabilization in his overall condition, but there was an improvement in the numbers on the test as well. As you can see here, originally they were at 241 in this test in 2011, then they dropped to 234, then to 223. Eventually, for the first time ever, normalized, high normal, but still normal, in June of 2013, and then went down again in October later that year. Now, one thing I want to point out about this next slide that was quite interesting is because I got a phone call into my office. The parent was, quite concerned because they had seen the lab test and they were said, his oxalate levels are back up again. But I noticed that the reference ranges had changed. And this is important. Notice the reference range here in the one previous is 35 to 185, and that was where it was previous to that. But now the reference range was 8.9 to 67. Well, I noticed that they had him listed as an 85-year-old man. So somehow, whether it was the lab or the parent had written the age in correctly, it shifted and changed the reference range. His oxalic level was the lowest it had ever been. So what happens with the organic acid testing is the ranges or the reference ranges on the test change. They're different for male, female, greater than 13 or less than 13. So that's exactly what happened in this particular case. Now, the problem with Clostridia bacteria, as I discuss in the Autism Recovery 101 course and other videos in this particular section, is it's very resistant to treatment. So antibiotics can work extremely well, like Flagyl or vancomycin, to knock it down. But a lot of times we have to do cyclical dosing, where we're dosing the antibiotic over sometimes a 3 to 4 week period of time, sometimes a little bit longer, not on a continual basis, but in what's called a cyclical dosing fashion. And you can use botanicals that way as well. So I go through that in the Autism Recovery 101 course, and of course you can reach out to me through the forum as well. So sure enough, his Clostridia levels would come back, but you'll notice that his oxalate levels stayed relatively normal because they were consistent with that diet. So even though he was still autistic, he wasn't perfect behavior, but even though his Clostridia levels came back, he would not get as volatile, not get as agitated, would not have a self-injurious behavior because the oxalates were normalized. So his situation was really kind of a classic oxalate and Clostridia were really driving a lot of his issues. Now, the organic acid test, as well as other labs, are available through self-order through the labtestplus.com website. You can also order directly from the lab too. If you order through Lab Test Plus, the test will come with a personalized written interpretation that I provide, along with action step suggestions, treatment suggestions, etc. That all come part of that lab ordering process. So labtestplus.com, you can look at the menu of what is available there. I'm Dr. Kurt Wolder for AutismRecoverySystem.com. Thank you.